Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Icing on the Skate podcast. Episode 23, I want to say. That's not too bad,
I
is
love
it?
the doubt in your voice.
You know, you could probably tell that I don't really plan this stuff ahead. I just kind of
Really? I
do it
had
on the
no
fly,
idea.
you know? It'll work when you get to it. So yeah, once again, I'm joined by that geezer in the top right.
Sup?
Still can't get rid of him. I've been trying, believe me. He's always
No,
like,
you
I
have
want to be on the
not.
podcast. I want to be on the podcast. He's not.
Podcast would be nothing without me.
Well, I mean, for some of the topics we're talking about today, absolutely. Chris is he's
You'd
he's
have no
gonna earn his
stats
keep here.
either.
No, he's earning his keep here in this episode. So, for those of you who don't know what this podcast is, we probably have lots of people dip in and out as the weeks go on. This is a podcast where we primarily talk about British ice hockey, primarily the Elite Ice Hockey League, and we talk about the stuff that happens, the results that happen during the week. We're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so we're going to be talking a little bit more about the playoff picture again, which still as crazy as it's ever been, for sure. And we've got some other news to talk about within some of the lower tiers of British hockey, which we've got a lot to talk about there. And also, we then move over to the NHL, and we talk about a few hockey-related things in between. We will keep an eye on the chat. If you keep seeing me look this way, it's because I've got my chat open there. We won't answer all of your questions until near the end. So if you have anything that you want to mention relating to the topic while we're doing this, then yeah, feel free to throw it out there if it's relevant to the topic. But if it's a question like completely out of left field, it might take us a little while to get to it. Why was your camera in sync your last stream and not pot? I don't know. I really don't know what this stream does. It's because I had to sync the camera and the audio up to the capture card that I use, whereas in this stream I don't. So for some reason, both of them go out of sync. I don't know. Fuck it. Anyway, let's move on. Mr. Gadsby, would you like to take us
Hello.
through the standings for the Elite League at this moment in time?
Standings. I can do the standings. Right. Top
very
of the
much.
table with 5 games to go. The Cardiff Devils on 86. Second place, the Belfast Giants, also with 5 to go on 84. Just a game back.
Yeah.
The Panthers can't catch them. They're in third. They have 3 games to go and are on 67. And Glasgow have 4 games to go. They're on 65. They're in fourth. The Guildford Flames are in fifth. They have 61 with 5 games to go. The Sheffield Steelers are in sixth. They've only got 3 games to go and they've got 60. So Sheffield can't catch Nottingham.
Nope.
In seventh are the Five Flyers, also on 60, but they've got 2 games in hand over Sheffield. They've got 5 games to go. The last playoff spot is currently being held by the Manchester Storm, who have 4 games to go and 55 points. Coventry just outside, 5 games to go and 55 points, though. The Dundee Stars are in 10th, 4 games to go, 54 points. And then at the bottom, who can't make it into the playoffs, the Milton Keynes Lightning, 5 games to go, just the 32 points.
So, I mean, it's kind of everything's continuing as we were expecting it to, but then there's a few sort of curveballs that have been thrown in there. Like,
Yeah, the only...
go for it.
I was going to say, the only big thing that we need to really comment on from last week is that last week Cardiff had a 4-point gap in a game in hand. Now they have no games in hand and only a 2-point gap.
And interestingly, if Cardiff and Belfast, if the trends keep going at the moment, but say Belfast and Cardiff are tied in points by the end of the season, if the trends keep going the way that they're going, then the Belfast Giants, they've got more regulation wins. So if they both were tied on... So say if Cardiff won 4 of the next 5 games, as did Belfast... no, that would still mean Cardiff are in front, right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Belfast have to win 1 more game than Cardiff.
Yeah, so if Belfast won 1 more game than Cardiff in these last 5 each, then Belfast, provided that it works out, it carries on this way, then the Belfast Giants would actually win on regulation wins, which is interesting, considering the Cardiff Devils have more points in overtime. So
yeah, and I still believe that Belfast have got the better run in.
Yeah, exactly. So, and speaking of which, the Giants are on a 4-game winning streak, so they're keeping it up. Now it is. I think good to mention now that those of you Elite Ice Hockey League fans in the UK that have free sports, there is a game on this week. It's the Glasgow Clan versus the Cardiff Devils, which Chris said to me before the podcast, and I absolutely agree, is huge for both teams. The Glasgow Clan currently on a 4-game losing streak. They really need to find some sort of consistency and try and gain a few more points, see if they can overtake Nottingham again, or see if they can keep pace with Nottingham. And Cardiff, they're wanting to extend on their lead. So, yeah, this is going to be a very good game. I'm definitely going to watch that game. It's on Wednesday, 20th of March, at 7:30 is the puck drop. So I assume the coverage will start at 7. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that game if you have free sports and you want to watch some Elite League hockey. It's going to be a good one. That's going to be as important a game as you'll find probably up until maybe the last day of the Elite League. And then if we go further down to the bottom of the standings, Dundee, fair play to them. They were a little bit out of the playoff race, but they've managed to put themselves right back in it this last weekend. I think they had a 4-point weekend, although it says that the Dundee Stars they're on a 1-game winning streak. So maybe they got 3 points this weekend? Something like that.
No, they played 3 games, you see, which might be where you're confused.
Right, that's it. They must
so
have
they
won
did have a 4-point weekend, but out of 6.
Right, got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. So yeah, they're only 1 point out of a playoff spot. They're tied in tied in games played with 8th place Manchester. The only thing that's working against Dundee is the amount of regulation wins they have. They've got 12 overtime or shootout losses, which has kept them in this race at this point. But, I mean, if it came to both teams tied in points, they wouldn't make the playoffs because they haven't got as many wins. So Manchester, Coventry and Dundee, they are going to be fighting down to that last game to see who gets in the playoffs here. And I for one, cannot wait. We'll talk about the playoff picture a little bit. We'll talk about it in more detail a little bit later on.
Yeah.
There's a few other pieces of news we want to go into. But first, I just want to take you through some of the stats. We've got 5 games left for most teams in the season. Ben Lake of the Coventry Blaze is still leading the league in points. 31 goals, 39 assists for 70 points in 55 games, which I believe this is his first year in the Elite League, and if so, he's doing a very good job. Darcy Murphy is leading the league in goals with 35 in 53 games, and Alex Guptill is second with 33 goals in 55 games. For assists on the season, I believe last week it was Mike Hammond, and that continues. 52 assists on the season for Mike Hammond. 17 goals, 52 assists for the Manchester Storm forward. And if I just go over to the goaltenders, I can never say this name. Beskorowany, that's it. He is leading the league in goals against average and save percentage so far. So, yeah, I think it's more of the same. But then again, it just goes to show you the quality of the players that are at the top of that standings. They're consistently at the top. It's not as if they're at the top there and then they're up there for a week or two and then we've got 5 or 6 players bouncing between them. It's remained relatively consistent so far. So I find that quite interesting. So, Chris Gadsby, shall we talk about some of the news?
Go for it.
Thank you very much, because I was going to do it anyway. So,
well, I know you were.
The International Ice Hockey Federation released their annual list that they do every year of the top 100 teams in attendance. So it's their annual European attendance ranking, with the regular season being concluded in most countries at the moment. For the 18th consecutive year in this IIHF ranking, SC Bern of the Swiss National League A leads all European clubs, including the KHL, I might add, with an average attendance of 16,290. Wow. That's more than double the National Ice Centre. That's crazy. Like, wow. Fair play to SC Bern. You have some dedicated fans there. They have led the European rankings since overtaking Colner High, the Cologne Sharks of the DEL, who had it in 2001/02. But yeah, they've had it for the last 18 years, which is mental. A team to be the highest, and like I said, this is including some KHL teams. If I find the rankings here, so for example, SC Bern, top team, 16,290. This is average attendance, I might add. This isn't overall attendance. SKA St. Petersburg is second. They were second last year with 13,016. The Berlin Ice Bears were third with 12,026. I'll just run through the top 10 and then go to the Elite League ones. Then the Cologne Sharks were fourth place with 11,573. Adler Mannheim, so lots of DEL teams are making their way up there. Adler Mannheim with 11,422. The Frölunda Indians are sixth place with 10,071. The Zurich Lions are seventh place with 9,694, which I've been to that arena. It's a very nice arena. Dynamo Minsk, eighth place, the KHL team, 9,495. Sparta Prague of the Czech League, ninth place with 9,042. And Jokerit of the KHL, the Finnish team, 8,768. That's the top 10. In terms of Elite League teams, I believe, yes, at number 35 in the top 100 teams is the Sheffield Steelers of Team Great Britain with an average attendance of 6,045 people. Now, considering they were 53rd on that list last year, that's pretty impressive. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it would be interesting. I haven't got, obviously, last year's figures up, but it'd be interesting to see how that compares to last year.
Yeah.
Not in terms of placing, but in terms of numbers. Because, of course, they could have stayed the same and everyone else could have dropped.
Yeah. Speaking of a team that's slightly dropped, the Nottingham Panthers are on the top 100 list. They were ranked 42. The last year they were ranked 40. And their average attendance this year has been, or is, 5,799. And just to give you a bit of context, the Sheffield Steelers have had a better average attendance than at least three different KHL teams. A couple of Swiss teams, a Czech team. Yeah, and wait, let me check. Where'd they go? Oh, there they are. Yeah, they've actually done really well in terms of attendance. We're talking about like a fair few amount of KHL teams. They've got better attendance than, which is, considering the state of hockey in this country. I mean, I'd like to say it in a better way, but I think that's a fair assessment. The state of British hockey, that's pretty impressive to have, like, to be 35th. Like, out of the top 100 teams, they're 35th. The Nottingham Panthers are 42nd, and I believe the Belfast Giants are on here as well, if I just find them. They are a little bit further down.
Yeah, they're in the 80s, aren't they?
Yeah, something like that. They are 79th. They were 74th last year, so they've had a drop of 5 places. Their average attendance is 4,267, which is a shame, I must admit, considering they have a really nice arena over there. They just need more people to go. To give you a context, so in 100th place this year is the Stavanger Oilers of the Norwegian League, 3,731 average attendance, and Jip Jyväskylä, the Champions Hockey League winners last year, 99th place with 3,748. So, and fair play to some League 2 teams being on here. There's several Russian League 2 teams here that are sort of in the bottom 80 or bottom 20 or whatever. And there's a couple of Swedish second teams as well, so they're doing really well. In terms of where we rank compared to countries, as opposed to specific teams, Great Britain, the Elite Ice Hockey League, ranked 8th. 8th out of 19. The average attendance, 2,850, which I think is really awesome. So fair play to Great Britain. So Switzerland is first place with 6,949 average attendance. Russia, with the Continental Hockey League, is second, 6,397, yep. Then it's Germany, Sweden, Czech Republic, Finland, Austria, then Great Britain. Fair play. And in last place, it's the Netherlands/Belarus League with the average attendance of 585. I mean, at least they're getting some people through the door.
Netherlands/Belarus is a bit of a random league.
Well, yeah, it says NED/BEL, so I assume that's it, but don't quote me on it, obviously.
No, it's not. You're not going to go from Holland and fly across Europe, are you?
I don't know the league. It's the Bene League, BENE, but it's capital B lowercase e, capital N lowercase e. So I don't really know. I must admit I've never heard of that league at all. But the Elite Ice Hockey League beat out countries like Norway. Wow, we have better average attendance than the Norwegian league. The French league, the Denmark league, the Asian league, the Slovakian league, the Polish league. So we're sitting pretty in the top 10 in Europe. This isn't including North America, obviously. We'd be much further down the list if it was North America. But I'm actually really proud. It's the same 3 Elite League teams that are up there. So it just goes to show you that Great British Hockey is still making an impact within the European picture. Maybe there's still, of course, plenty of room for improvement. But when, say, for example, the Sheffield Steelers, considering how turbulent their season has been this year, they're up with the likes of Salavat Yuleev. They're 32nd. They only have, on average, about 100 more people come to their games than the Sheffield Steelers. And they're currently in the Gagarin Cup playoffs in the second round. Like, they're doing really well for themselves at the moment. They've won several Gagarin Cups, and Sheffield is right up there with them. So I think this is awesome. So, Chris, what do you think? And are there any teams that you think should be in there or are on their way to getting in this top 100 list?
Yeah, I mean, while I randomly think about it, that BENE league, you weren't far off. It is Netherlands, but it's Belgium and Netherlands.
That makes
which does make
sense.
a lot more sense.
That makes more sense.
Considering the bordering countries.
I just saw BEL and I thought Belarus.
No, it's Belgium. There are teams, honestly, that you would think they would be in that list if they were actually able to be.
Yeah.
By which I mean, like, Cardiff. If they had a big enough arena...
Oh, yeah.
They would be in the list.
Well, so say for example, okay, so you've spent a lot of time in Cardiff, and I know we have quite a lot of Cardiff Devils fans that listen to this. What's the attendance? What's the capacity of the Viola Arena? It's about 3,000, right?
I think I think it's about 2,800. Ben will know better than I will.
So this is
3,300.
3,300. Okay, so this is a general question. Give your honest opinion. Do you think if the Viola Arena was, say, 4,500 seats, do you think they could fill it out on a regular basis?
I mean, it's sold out whenever I've gone.
Okay.
Apart from, the little away block.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they'd sell it out every single time, but I reckon they'd definitely have 4 in there.
Right. So say if they had 4,000 people in there every game, that would put them at 86th out of 100.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get what you mean. Like, of course, they don't have the capacity, because the lowest on this list is 3,731. So their arena, like Ben says, of 3,300, they don't have the capacity at the moment. But yeah, I completely understand what you mean. So because we've got the 3 sort of big arena teams in that list. Obviously, they've got the bigger capacity. They're either starting to, or they have already established that solid fan base. What are the capacity of some of the, like, Scottish rinks, for example?
Oh, tiny.
Right, okay. Well, even Glasgow?
I mean, Glasgow's in a shopping centre. I think Edinburgh was something like 1,500, 1,800.
Right, okay.
They really weren't, at the capacity that they would be anywhere close to getting on the list.
Which also, it kind of raises, not necessarily concerns, but it raises a few points, I think, that... Like, the 3 arena teams that we have, they're going to continue to either sit nicely where they are or continue to go up because they still have room. Like, for example, Belfast, their average was, 4,000? Their arena can hold 10,000, I'm pretty sure. So, if they had the demand there, they'd shoot straight up the list. For example, if they got 10,000 a game, they'd be within the top 10, like, straight away. Of course, that's a difficult thing to do throughout an entire season, but... Yeah, I think it's very interesting that I think it's good that the 3 arena teams are on that list. That's brilliant. We need the 3 arena teams on that list in order to sort of keep showing, hey, this league is good. You need to pay attention to this league. However, I think it shows the disparity between the top teams and the bottom teams. When, like, for example, you're saying some of our rinks can only hold a very small percentage of what's required to even get into the top 100 on this list. And of course, there's lots of leagues around Europe and the Asia, I should say, around the world, and Asia and Europe and things like that that didn't have teams on this list. But I'm take it from the positive side. I'm glad that that Great Britain, we've got 2 teams in the top 50, which is, considering how sort of lower down the pecking order our league is considered, I'm quite happy with that, you know? I will take that. But anyway, let's move on from this. Let's talk about Team Great Britain. I think this is a great segue. So, Chris originally sent this to me, so thank you, Chris.
Did I? I can't remember now.
You did, yeah. You sent it to me, I think, the day it came out. So, this was posted on the 14th of March. Now, we've talked about the Team Great Britain squad on previous podcasts. Of course, they are going up against a couple of KHL teams. They've already been up against Dinamo Riga in a friendly game at the Sky Dome in Coventry. They are now going up against the KHL side Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod. They are playing 1 game at the Fly DSA Arena and 1 game at the Motorpoint Arena. They're playing in Nottingham on the 27th of April and then in Sheffield on the 28th of April. And head coach of the team, Pete Russell, who's also head coach of the Glasgow Clan, has announced his team. So, I'm going to read them out, Chris. You're just going to tell me your initial thoughts and what you think. To be honest, I don't think it's much different from their other friendly, but if there are any key differences, do let me know. I think there's one difference. I think there's one difference that I noticed, but other than that, let me know. So, netminders, the goaltenders of Team Great Britain for these friendly games. We have, of course, Ben Bounds from the Cardiff Devils, Thomas Murdy from the Cardiff Devils, and Jackson Whistle from the Sheffield Steelers. So there are your 3 netminders. Your thoughts, Chris?
Well, I mean, I know I did a brief experiment on Franchise Hockey Manager of like the best Elite League team possible, and those 2 were like the best. Bounds and Whistle and Murdy were like the best netminders. They're better than quite a few of the imports. No surprises at all. Bounds has been the backstop for Great Britain for a number of years now, and I mean, he's going to get the start in pretty much every game, isn't he?
Yeah, I love how you use your evidence as Franchise Hockey Manager. That's the kind of stuff I need on this channel. It's like, I played NHL 19 once. I'm now a general manager. So yeah, I completely agree. I think Ben Bounds, of course. Jackson Whistle, I think if he has a more competent defense in front of him for a sustained period of time, then I think he will play well. Like, we've seen it before with him with the Belfast Giants. If he has a more structured defense in front of him, he can shine. Like, he'll plug those holes that the defense can't. If he's more exposed, then he's kind of gets thrown to the lions, but I doubt he'll have that many starts, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if Jackson Whistle was just brought... And this isn't a knock on Jackson Whistle at all, but if he was brought in as the 3rd string injury cover, essentially, which, I mean, to have Jackson Whistle as your injury cover, I'm feeling quite good about that. We could certainly have a lot worse, is what I would say. So now, the defensemen on the Team Great Britain side to face Torpedo next month. Josh Batch from the Cardiff Devils. Tim Billingsley from the Nottingham Panthers. Dallas Earhart of the Manchester Storm. Mark Garside of the Belfast Giants. Stevie Lee of the Nottingham Panthers. Evan Mosey of the Cardiff Devils. Ben O'Connor of the Sheffield Steelers. David Phillips of the Sheffield Steelers, and Mark Richardson of the Cardiff Devils. Your thoughts?
Very, very strong.
Yes, I agree.
Is my initial thought from that. I mean, you've got people such as O'Connor, Mosey, Lee, who have been obviously part of the GB setup for a long time.
Absolutely.
A couple of people who haven't been around so long, but they've been doing really well in the Elite League.
Yep.
It is, I think, probably one of the strongest defence that I've seen from Great Britain for quite a while.
Definitely like the strongest British-trained defensive core as well.
Yeah.
Like, go for it.
So I was just going to say, yeah, very strong. I think, as you were saying with Bounds and Whistle, they're really going to help them out because they're not going to let an awful lot through to them.
No.
I mean, we know how strong Lee and O'Connor are, and Richardson's been doing really well for Cardiff, and of course Mosey can score down the other end as well, which is always going to be beneficial for Russell to have. Yeah, as can O'Connor. It's really, really a good asset for Russell to have, and yeah, good back line there.
I agree. I think that's a really solid decor. Because, I mean, 2, 4, 6, 8. So he's got 9 defense there. He's only going to need to suit 3. Or 6, sorry. Like, so 3 of them probably won't be seeing much time. Out of them, is there anybody that you think that you would drop out of those? Because, I mean,
He has got to drop 3, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So, because, like Max mentions in the chat, there's 9 defensemen there. He's only going to be able to ice 6 or 7, but I would assume he's only going to ice 6. I would say Ben O'Connor, Richardson, Evan Mosey are like automatic lock-ins. Like those 3 are like automatic. They're making the roster. So that's 3. Then I would probably say, I think now you get tough because like all of them deserve to be in the lineup. It's just which ones do you send to the press box for the night? You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, but he's also taking something like he's got 16 forwards on there at the moment. So
yeah, exactly. However, what I should add is remember they're playing 2 games, so he might use a set of 6 for one game and then change up the set of 6 for the next game. Because remember the games are back to back as well.
Yeah.
So for example, including the netminders as well, maybe use Bounds in the first game, Whistle in the second. Because the second game's going to be at the Fly DSA Arena. That's where Whistle plays every week. So maybe he might decide to play to some of those strengths. Maybe he uses a more Nottingham lineup. Well, there's only 2 Panthers defensemen, but maybe he uses players that either play better or are more comfortable in one arena one night and then use other players the other night. I don't know.
Yeah, but what you've got to remember is that it's a 28-man squad against Italy and Hungary, and it's already been cut to 25 before we play the KHL sides. So, that's not going to work because they're not going to play. They can't play the Nottingham people in Nottingham and then drop them.
Wait. I'm confused. So how many players are they allowed to take with them to the World Championships?
He's got the squad of 28 for the training camp and matches against Italy and Hungary. He then has to cut it to 25.
Okay.
For the games against Torpedo.
Okay.
And then it's only 25 that will represent GB at the World Championships.
Right. Okay.
So he's got a squad of 28 for the game in Coventry on the 19th of April and Milton Keynes on the 21st. They then lose 3 players for the games on the 27th and the 28th.
Right. Got it. Okay. Right. That makes sense to me. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, if I'm honest, like Ben O'Connor, Mark Richardson, Evan Mosey, all lock-ins. I would probably say Tim Billingsley could be dropped. I don't think he brings much more than anybody else in this lineup, to be honest. I will preface this by saying they are all fantastic defensemen and could all represent Great Britain very well. I think you're kind of essentially looking for odd men out, really, aren't you? Just the one that you can find any excuse to go, you're not necessarily what we need right now. So if he's only allowed to take a 6... So how many... Sorry, remind me again, how many is he allowed to take to the championships? 21?
25.
25?
He only has to lose 3.
Okay, he only has to lose 3 then, so that could be forwards as well.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'd probably say if he had to drop a defenseman, Tim Billingsley, or Josh Batch, but I'd probably go Billingsley. Anyway, let's move on to the forwards. So then we can bring it into the whole conversation. So, for the forwards, Chris, we start with Ollie Betteridge of the Nottingham Panthers, which I know you'll be very happy about. Brendan Connolly of the Glasgow Clan. Ben Davis of the Guildford Flames. Robert Dowd of the Sheffield Steelers. Robert Farmer of the Nottingham Panthers. Luke Ferrara of the Coventry Blaze. Mike Hammond of the Manchester Storm. Liam Kirk of the Peterborough Petes, who was, I believe, the only player, to my recollection, that didn't play in the game against Dinamo Riga. Because, of course, he had his own season to worry about. Robert Lakovic of the Nottingham Panthers. Ben Lake of the Coventry Blaze. Kieran Long of the Manchester Storm. Matthew Myers of the Cardiff Devils. Craig Peacock of the Glasgow Clan. Brett Pellini of the Nottingham Panthers. Jonathan Phillips of the Sheffield Steelers. And last but certainly not least, Colin Shields of the Belfast Giants. What do you think about that forward core, Chris?
Yeah, I would hate to be Pete Russell because I do not know where you lose 3 players from the roster.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Which, I mean, this is probably the first time in years that we could probably sit there and go, this team, all of them, are legitimately solid players. Like, it's not as if it's like, oh, he's like the worst of a good bunch. Like, he's very, like you said with the defense, like, he's very much, Pete Russell's probably going to have to find any excuse he can, just any minor thing he can to say, unfortunately, we can't take you to the World Championships. Because, like you've said, this is probably one of the strongest rosters Great Britain's ever had.
It's a very strong roster, and I do not know where you would lose 3 players from.
Yeah.
I really don't.
It's tough. It's really tough. Because I think, like, you've got a nice mixture there as well of
you do.
Players
There's
with
youth
very
and
high
experience.
Yeah. And players with very high upside, but play a bottom 6 role really well. And I think that the perfect example of that is Ollie Betteridge. Like, him in a bottom 6 role, he shines as a Team GB forward in that bottom 6 role. Like, you just needed to see that his game against Dino Riga, he played really well in that game. Thank you for letting us know that in the chat. Brendan Connolly is also new to the GB squad, apparently, for this lineup. And he's had a pretty impressive year this year. So, he might be tough to drop as well.
They're all tough to drop, that's the problem.
Oh, exactly. It's going to be so tough. The problem is, when Pete Russell announces the players that aren't going to, or the players that haven't made the cut, it's going to be kind of, on the one side, you're like, oh, that's such a shame. Like, you really think they should have made it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I can see why he made those choices.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you look at we've gone through the defence, go through the forwards. I would say that Dowd, Farmer, Kirk, Lakovic, Myers, Peacock, Pellini are probably sure-ins.
I'm not so sure about Pellini. I'm not so sure about Pellini and Farmer. Purely for the fact
they always do well in the GB shirts.
True,
though.
But Pellini struggled this year. Like, he's had his struggles.
Yeah.
And Robert Farmer hasn't. Robert Farmer, what will keep him as a lock-in is his physicality. His goal scoring hasn't been there this year compared to other years. He scored a fair few amount of goals, but he hasn't been as dominant as he could have been this year. He's a good player at getting under opponent's skin and playing physical, which I think is what will keep him in the lineup. If he does go through a tough stretch. But yeah, I mean, Brett Pellini, I think he should be in it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't. You know?
The decision will be made from the 2 games because there will be some players who will not be able to handle the pressure of having to perform in the GB shirt.
Absolutely,
and that is where the drops are going to come from, because obviously going into the World Championships, it's an unknown for everybody.
Yeah.
And he's got to know that the players can handle it, and if they can't handle it against Italy, Hungary, and Torpedo, they aren't going to the World Championships.
Oh no, exactly, and it's like Max mentions. This is exactly why you have these sort of games, these international friendlies, to go. I need to find the players that produce the goods for us. And like among this list, you have Maxley mentions, Mike Hammond. He's currently leading the league in assists, so he's having a fantastic year for himself, and he played pretty well in the World Championships last year. You've got guys like Matthew Myers, which is a solid bottom 6 pickup, absolutely. You've got guys like Liam Kirk, who's finding his form with the North American game. To see him convert back to the... Because, of course, he did very well in the under-20s, but how does he do against the likes of Canada and Sweden? He's a lock-in for the lineup, I completely agree. But I will be very interested to see how he does, how he performs, because he didn't really get many minutes last year. Because they were wanting to focus on the sort of older veteran guys, more experienced guys. Will Liam Kirk be used correctly, or be given the chance to play a top 6 role for a friendly or two to show that he can live up to that hype? Or does he not be able to do it? There's a lot of sort of younger players here, sort of early to mid-20s as well, which I think is really nice. And then we've got some of those older guys like Colin Shields and Jonathan Phillips and Matthew Myers. I think it's a really solid roster. Like, I mean, I don't know all of the rosters and how they all performed since 1994, but I would argue that this is the best Great Britain have had since the last time they were in the World Championships. Certainly
the
the
thing
best
you've got
British
to remember
trained.
with I was going to say the thing you've got to remember with '94 was there was a lot of dual nationals in it,
Exactly, yeah.
almost all dual nationals, and now it's not, which is a testament to
Exactly.
what everyone's been doing in Great British hockey over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Bringing, these players from. I mean, some of these players hadn't even put skates on their feet the last time Great Britain were in the World Championships. They've been developed from, the very first skating lesson all the way through the 9s, 11s, 13s, 15s, 18s, 20s, all the way through.
Just to elaborate on your point, there's probably several. There's at least one, but there's several of the players that weren't even born the last time Team Great Britain were in the. I wasn't.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Which like you said, I think it's an absolute testament to the quality that Great Britain has been producing. Sure, on an international stage, we've still got a ways to go, but the fact that you look down that lineup and nearly every single one is a British national or a single British national, that's incredible. And they're decent players. It's not as if they're just sympathy picks. Like, they're legitimately good players. So that's brilliant. But anyway, let's move on because we're way into this podcast already.
Yeah, we really are.
So, we've got a quick bit of news that I think Chris could elaborate on a little bit more. The EIHL recently concluded its season in both the North and South, am I correct?
Yep.
And the Hull Pirates managed to take the EIHL North 1 victory. Chris mentioned last week that it was very close. I think the top three teams tied on points.
The top three teams were tied on points and they all played each other going into the final weekend. Hull beat Telford on Saturday while Sheffield beat Solway, so Telford were then out of it. And it had Hull and Sheffield tied on points and they played each other in the final game of the season. So it was effectively a one-game showdown cup final for the title.
Everything on the line.
Everything on the line, and Hull came out on top by 8-3.
Wow.
And now we're in the playoffs for that as well.
Nice. So the Hull Pirates managed to do it. And in the South, who won the South?
The South was the Swindon Wildcats who won the South. They beat out the Peterborough Phantoms. And so Swindon won in the South, and they're obviously in there going to start their playoffs as well. In my point of view, some bad scheduling by the EIHA because they've decided to make the NIHL finals weekend the same weekend as the EIHL.
Oh,
and I think it was something like of all the teams that had obviously allocations, I think across the league like 200 tickets were sold.
Wow.
Across the league, if I remember rightly from what I read.
Jeez, that's rough.
So why would you do it at the same weekend?
That's such a boneheaded move. Wow, like, you are absolutely right. Like, why would you do that the same week? Like, the Elite Ice Hockey League, like, playoff final weekend, they can pack out the National Ice Centre, but any other week, when it's not Nottingham versus Sheffield, like, you have to put a bit of work in to sell out, if you're lucky. But you're thinking about, like, the difference between a 7,000 seater. Where's the playoff final for the NIHL supposed to be
Coventry.
played?
It's the Coventry Ice Dome.
Oh, right, okay. And that, their attendance is what? Like, 2,000? 3,000?
Something like, I mean, they're not in the top 100, are they? So it's not over 3.5.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's that. Whoever decided to make that decision needs to realise that they made a bit of a mistake there. So, let's just quickly go back to the Elite League. This is our final thing to talk about with the Elite League, but not for British hockey. Got a big thing to discuss in a moment. So I kind of want to get through this ever so quickly so we can discuss the main topic in a lot more detail. So, the playoff push. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more now. So, in the bottom of the standings, like Chris mentioned earlier, Manchester, 55 points. They have the 8th seed in the playoff push. Coventry are out of the playoffs at the moment, but are also on 55 points and have a game in hand on Manchester. And Dundee have 54 points in 10th place and have played 56 games and have 4 games left. So there is 1 point separating 10th place and 8th place. Now, before I get Chris's opinion on this, I think it's also important to mention Fife and Sheffield. Because if Coventry, if they did manage to do it, which is unlikely but not out of the cards, if they won their last 5 games, they were, or say 4 out of their last 5, and Fife and Sheffield completely imploded, they could even hop them. Like, there's still a lot to play for in terms of position in the standings. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, they do the whole 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7 for the playoffs, don't
Yes. Yes.
Because the Challenge Cup is the choose your own opponent.
Yes.
Yeah. So
No, what they did, they have done it in previous, is that 1, 2, and 3 are made up of the conference champions.
Right.
And then everybody else slots in. But I did check, and they're not doing that this year. It is just a straight 1, 8, 2, 7,
Good,
3, 6,
because
4,
that
5.
conference plan is dumb. So 1 through 8, 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, etc., etc.
Yep.
The way that many NHL fans want the NHL playoffs to go back to, instead of this whole division and wildcard stuff. I don't know. I don't really know my opinion on that. So, yeah. So, Chris, Manchester,
Yes.
Coventry, Dundee. If you had to pick one at this moment in time, which one do you think is making the playoffs at the end of the season? Bearing in mind there's only 3 weeks left until the...
Well, there's only 2 weeks left of the regular season.
3 weeks left till the playoff finals. That's 13th and 14th.
4.
What's 13th and 14th?
Yeah, no, sorry, 3. Yeah, sorry, my bad.
I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I'm getting confused. Yeah. It depends on. I mean, I disagree with you about having Sheffield and Fife still in there.
I mean, no. Let me just clarify that before you carry on. I don't think they're going out of the playoffs. I didn't say that. I said there is still the chance that Coventry could jump them in the standings, but I never said they wouldn't make the playoffs.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yes, there's the chance. I don't think they'll do that either.
No, I agree.
Purely because Manchester, Coventry, and Dundee all have to play Cardiff and Belfast.
Do they?
In their last 4 or 5 games, which is why I think that 5-point gap is going to be too much to jump.
Yeah, I
Fife
think you're
or
fair.
Sheffield.
However, those 3 teams do all have at least 1 game in hand on Sheffield. That might come into it, perhaps.
They do. The other thing to point out is that Coventry, they have Belfast and Cardiff.
Yep.
They also have to play Dundee and Manchester.
Oh, so they will have to play each other at least once.
Manchester have to play Coventry, and Dundee have got to play Coventry as well. So Coventry have got to play them both, and Dundee have got to play... Dundee and Manchester have both got to face Coventry and Cardiff and Belfast. So it's it's the teams in the top 2, which you would suspect they would probably lose, and then themselves. It's almost going to be like a mini league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, for example, those games, say Manchester versus Cardiff, Dundee versus Belfast, etc., etc. That has implications on 2 different sets of mini battles going on in this war for the playoffs. Because, for example,
Dundee Coventry is this Wednesday.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, for example, like you have, say, Belfast versus Dundee. Belfast have historically this season destroyed Dundee nearly every single time that they've played each other. Not every single time, but nearly every single time. Now, say Dundee plays upset. That could have a huge impact on whether Belfast manage to tie Cardiff for first place, and that could mean that jumps them up into a playoff spot, you know?
Yeah, well, the Belfast-Dundee game is in Belfast, and it's the final weekend. It's Belfast's last game.
Oh, wow.
So they're going to be going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Dundee could be out the playoffs by the time we get to this.
Yeah. But then they could feel like, well, we want to play upset.
Well,
we have the chance to stop them winning the Elite League.
Yeah.
But,
I'm still favouring Belfast, to be honest, because of their running.
Yeah, I mean, I will be fascinated to watch the results come in of the games that happen over this week and next week. But
as I was saying, Belfast's last game is the day before Cardiff's last game.
Wow.
So Cardiff are going to know what they've got to do, and they're away in Coventry, and they're going to know what they've got to do.
Exactly. But I just want to bring this back to the whole Coventry being able to jump maybe Fife or
Yep.
Sheffield. The reason I mention that, Coventry have 2 games in hand on Sheffield.
They do.
They're only 5 points back.
Yep.
So, if they win both their games, which, I mean, if they won their game against Manchester and Dundee, then they're only 1 point down from Sheffield and Fife at the moment. To be fair, Fife do also have 2 games in hand on Sheffield as well. I can very much see Sheffield either take... I wouldn't be surprised if Sheffield take the 7th seed.
Well, Sheffield have 2 games against Milton Keynes.
Okay.
1 home, 1 away, and then a trip to Belfast in the middle.
Okay, so let's assume that Belfast take the win there. Just purely
Let's assume that Sheffield get 4 points.
Well, I would say 4 points out of 6 is most likely. However,
yeah, that's what I mean.
Don't put it past Milton Keynes to play upset.
No, but I think 4 points is the most likely.
Yeah, oh yeah. So say 4 points is the most likely. They'll finish the year with 64 points in 60 games, right?
Yeah.
That means Coventry have to get 9 points in 5 games, which is attainable but incredibly difficult.
Yeah, unless they have an upset against Cardiff or Belfast.
Yeah, exactly. And then Guildford is on 61 points, but they've got 2 games in hand on Sheffield as well. I think Guildford will slot in as the 5th seed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Sheffield could overtake them, but I don't really know Guildford's running for the rest of the games this year.
Guildford's running is...
I assume they have to play Nottingham or something, because they haven't come up yet.
So Guildford are away at Milton Keynes, away at Fife, home to Coventry, away to Nottingham, and then home to Dundee. So again, they've got Coventry, Dundee. They've got a big say in the bottom as well.
Yeah, and they've got a pretty decent run in. Like, they don't have to play Cardiff or Belfast, do they?
No.
Nope. And so Nottingham is the highest seed they need to play for the rest of the season.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, they could... To be fair, it's not out of the picture that they could even overtake Nottingham if they played their cards right. They've got 2 games in hand on Nottingham, only 6 points down. If Nottingham have a really bad end of the season and Guildford have a really good end of the season, you never know.
Yeah, well, Nottingham have Glasgow, obviously fighting for that 3rd place.
Indeed.
Fife, and then Guildford.
Right. The fact that there's so many like little narratives that could happen, I find it fascinating. I know some people might be like, I don't really care, let's just wait till see what happens. But like we could end up, and I know of course this is the way it always goes for every league and every sport and every season, but we could end up in a situation where it's, say for example, Cardiff, Belfast, Guildford, Glasgow, Nottingham, Coventry, Sheffield, Fife, you know? And that, whilst that's highly unlikely, like, we're still in a position that could happen, which is mental. So, yeah. I think it's great. But anyway, let's move on. I think the playoff picture is so fascinating. I'm definitely going to watch the Glasgow-Cardiff game later this week. That's going to be a good watch. But anyway, we now move on to our play under review. For those of you who don't know how this works, we basically just take a topic about British hockey, usually, and maybe it's something to do with the development of young players or other leagues in the country. We basically have a bit more of a discussion topic about a certain topic of discussion. So, yeah, it's kind of like everything else we do, just a little bit longer.
Yeah, and we're already at 5 to 8.
Well, exactly. So, well, the NHL stuff we've got this week is really short but simple.
That's true. That is true.
So, this is something that I definitely want to hear Chris's opinion on. I'll just read out all the information as it comes, and then we'll get your thoughts here, Chris, because you are going to know a lot more about the ins and outs of this than I am.
Yes.
So, there was an announcement made on Saturday, March the 16th, 2019. Chris mentioned last week that the English Ice Hockey Association, or the EIHL, were in discussions about potentially, or how they were going to move forwards for next year regarding some of the lower leagues in this country. So the NIHL, it's the National Ice Hockey League, that is what it stands for, right? Yeah. So you have the NIHL 1 and 2, North and South. So NIHL North 1 and North 2, South 1 and South 2. Now, that's changing. Those are all staying, but then there's something else coming in. So, on March 16th, the English Ice Hockey Association are apparently pleased to announce that there will be a new structure of the Men's Senior League for the upcoming 1920 season. At a meeting of National Ice Hockey League clubs in Warwickshire today, on the 16th of March, so it's 2 days ago, Warwickshire, well, I mean, they don't have a hockey team. The creation of a new 10-team division was approved to sit above the existing Division 1 in North and South. So, the way that it goes now, or for the next season, you're going to have the Elite League at the top of British hockey, then we're going to have this new National League, then we're going to have the NIHL North 1 and South 1, then the NIHL North 2, South 2. So basically they're just slotting another league in to be a go-between between the Elite League and the NIHL North and South 1. So the National League, if you're wondering what teams are going to be in it, I'll let you know. So the league, which is going to be called the National League, which just confuses things even more. So what, this is the NL? Doesn't make any sense. So the teams in the league will be the Basingstoke Bison, the Bracknell Bees, the Hull Pirates, the new Leeds team, which their arena is currently being built, shall be ready for the upcoming season if things go to plan. I haven't named it yet, so it's just called Leeds at the moment. We'll find out more. The Milton Keynes Lightning, which I'll talk about a little bit more after I've read this. The Peterborough Phantoms, the Raiders. It doesn't say who are the Raiders.
They're London. The
London Raiders. Okay, didn't actually say who it was on this article. The Sheffield Steel Dogs, the Swindon Wildcats, and the Telford Tigers. The remaining leagues also had their proposed membership approved at the meeting. So basically, teams in North 1, South 1, South 2, and North 2, they're all pretty much staying. A separate North Cup competition will also take place, featuring the Murrayfield Racers and the Dundee Comets from the Scottish National League. Full details of that competition will be completed in due course. Now, the director of the EIHL Senior League, Paul Hayes, said, "Today was a very positive meeting and the conclusion of several weeks of consultation and dialogue between the league management and our clubs." So, some of you might have noticed there that the Milton Keynes Lightning are going to be part of this new National League. Now, the Milton Keynes Lightning did come out with their own statement. They, of course, have had a very turbulent year this year. They're bottom of the Elite League standings by a noticeable margin. Not a huge margin. We're not talking Edinburgh Capitals margin, but a noticeable margin nonetheless. They have quite clearly been the odd team out of the 11. I think that's fair to say. If you disagree, then I understand. But I think that's a fair statement. So, the Milton Keynes Lightning made a statement before the NIHL actually came out with their statement, I believe, which was interesting. So, the Milton Keynes Lightning announced today, it doesn't have the date of when they actually announced this, that's helpful, that they will compete in the newly announced National Ice Hockey League. Oh, so it's called the NIHL. Oh, they're just confusing it even more. So we're going to have the NIHL North 1, the NIHL North 2, just call it something different. So anyway...
Odd man rant.
Yeah, you know. Announced by the English Ice Hockey Association earlier this month, this exciting new league will sit above the existing NIHL division, North and South. We already know that. Lightning's membership was confirmed at a meeting at the meeting and the rest of the teams. So Graham Moody, owner of the Lightning, commented, "I'm very excited and optimistic about the Lightning competing in this new league. It's going to be a combination of clubs who have faced each other previously and some who haven't. In teams comprising of a majority of British talent and 2 imports." So they're keeping the 2 import rule by the looks of it. Some old rivalries will be revived and new ones formed. We appreciate that some of our supporters would have preferred us to retain Elite League status. However, the long-term financial viability of the Lightning franchise is incredibly important to us, and it became unsustainable to compete at that level. Milton Keynes is a hockey town, and we are determined to maintain senior hockey here. He also continues to say, "Nobody wanted this season to be more successful than we did. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. Yeah, you didn't pay your coach. But it would have been a bigger mistake to try and continue in the Elite League before strengthening the already solid foundations with extra sponsorship agreements and higher attendance first. Joining the new National League means we will be able to compete sustainably again and put a genuinely competitive team onto the ice for our fans." They're hosting a fan forum on the 21st of March. At a venue to be announced at 7:30 if you guys want to go and talk to them about it if you're a Milton Keynes Lightning fan. Not that I have many on here. But yeah, so before I get... Well, actually no, I'll get your opinion on this, Chris, then I'll ask you more specifically about the Milton Keynes Lightning. So, in general, Chris, this new league, with your your knowledge of how the lower leagues in this country work, certainly much more than me. What are your thoughts on this new National League?
So it's effectively English Premier League version 2, to be honest.
So can you give a bit of context on what you mean by that?
So there used to be the Elite League, and the English Premier League was the second tier, and then you had the EIHL, as we still do.
Okay.
The EPL disbanded 2 years ago, which is just before I started doing the commentary, and so the teams, basically it wasn't sustainable because the teams didn't like Hull didn't like travelling down to Basingstoke and Bracknell on the M4 on a Sunday to get back really late to then go to work.
Right, okay.
So it disbanded and they kind of dropped down, so to speak, into the NIHL, but then that became the new second tier.
Right.
And as we have seen, particularly in the north, I know Crosa will know the south much better than I do, but in the north, last season, Telford, Hull and Sheffield, down to the final weekend, they were way ahead of everybody else, and it was only between the three of them. Okay. This year, Telford, Sheffield and Hull, way ahead of everybody else, final weekend down to the three of them.
Right.
You can kind of see where this is going.
Yeah.
So it has been decided that they're going to put in this National League. I'm going to call it EPL version 2.
Okay.
But and all the teams, so you could apply to go into it. Well, of course, the top teams that had been forced to drop down suddenly wanted to go back into it again, naturally, so they have done. And so that's going to be the new second tier. And then the NIHL is going to continue as it was with the teams that are left in the third and fourth tiers.
So based on what you've said and based on the little that I know about the lower leagues in this country, on the surface, this seems like a really good idea to me. Like we said, the NIHL, there were far too many games where the top teams, there was a massive disparity between the best teams and the worst teams. Far too many double-digit games where the teams that were better funded would just come in and destroy the teams that didn't really have much of a budget. So all of the teams here that are comprised in this National League, you've got the MK Lightning, who have played in the Elite League these last 2 years. Peterborough Phantoms, you've got the Sheffield Steel Dogs that have been a pretty successful team these last few years. You've got the Hull Pirates, who won their league. You've got the Swindon Wildcats, who won their league. You've got Telford, who were in the top 3 right down to the last weekend. You've got Peterborough, that were a good team. To me, it seems like it makes sense to have all of these teams together because they're all teams that have been very successful or overly successful or unnecessarily successful, maybe is a better term to put it, in the NIHL. So it's like, put all the teams that are too good for that league but not good enough for the Elite League together. It improves the quality of that league, and it of course means that there's more parity in the lower leagues as well. For example, the Nottingham Lions, which you commentate, if they're not having to play teams like the Sheffield Steel Dogs and Telford and Hull, they might play against some, for want of a better word, weaker teams, but it's more to their quality as well. So you're not going to get as many double-digit score lines, going to get closer games, similar quality players going at it in that league, and then you've also got this National League where there are similar quality players going at it in that league. So then this comes this question, and you sort of mentioned why the original EPL disbanded. If they were annoyed with all of that stuff and that's why it disbanded, why have they decided to do the exact same thing again?
Well, I mean, if there was another perfect solution, they'd have done it.
Of course.
The thing that you've got to be, well, I think it can work if they do it right and they take their time over it. By that I mean, I was thinking about this before we started the podcast this evening.
Okay.
The long journeys and the fact that it was the travelling fans and the money that you have to pay the referees and the money it costs you to hire a coach to go 200 odd miles. So if they do it right, I reckon it could work. By that I mean, in a similar way to they try and do with football as best they can.
Okay.
Make the long journeys Saturday games.
Yeah.
and make the short journeys Sunday games.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because people won't mind getting back late on a Saturday when they've got the weekend Sunday to do nothing if they want to, and it doesn't matter if they get back at like 1 a.m. Same for the players. And then the shorter games, they have on the Sunday when people can get back quickly. So
which you think is a common sense thing?
You would. So almost try and split that National League into North and South and have kind of inter-conference games on Saturdays and then in your own conference game Sundays.
Yeah, you could essentially have the North Division and the South Division of the National League, where it's like Saturday they play against one from the opposing division, Sunday they play against one in the same division. You know?
Well, that is how I would do it.
Which I think is a very good idea. It just makes sense, especially because these players are semi-professional, you know?
The other thing to watch out for is that don't take the league table this season with the rest of the teams as a given, because the best players from the rest of the best players from the rest of the teams, I'm thinking kind of Kieran Brown from Sutton, for example, is going to end up in this second league. So all the teams that are left, I'm thinking Solway as well up in Scotland.
Okay.
They came fourth in the Northern Division last year, and they were like nipping at the heels of the top three for quite a while.
Okay.
But they're going to lose quite a few of their best players to these teams that will pay them money, because they'll have quite a big budget.
Yeah.
Well, I say big in relation to some of the other teams. So everything's going to shake around, and of course they're still not decided because they don't know who's going to, like in the EIHL North 1 now where the Lions are, there's only 7 teams at the moment. They're looking for an 8th. Widnes, who won the second division, have for the second time gone, no, we don't want to go up, we'll stay where we are.
Right, okay.
So, you know, there is still quite a bit to sort out. But I mean, as Croce says, play games 4 times home, 4 times away, and have back-to-backs to get them out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. So, the one thing I did want to bring up, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about this. So, the Milton Keynes Lightning announcing they were going to do this. Now, quite a lot of fans, both from the Milton Keynes Lightning and from the Elite League, were like, oh, no, this is a shame. Like, of course Milton Keynes have struggled. Like, of course they have. But lots of people said how much they loved their away games to Milton Keynes and how great Milton Keynes fans were when they came to their respective arenas when Milton Keynes were playing away. Now, some people, of course, did their research and have been keeping an eye on things, how they've been going, and by the looks of it, the Milton Keynes Lightning owners have said specifically since the beginning of this season that next year, for the 1920 season, they were ensuring that they were going to play in the Elite League for next season. They weren't just saying, if finances allow it, we will do that. They said, we will do it. And now they've made a complete 180 in order to join this new league, which I think makes sense for the Milton Keynes Lightning, because they're struggling in the Elite League. They've said that they can't quite keep up financially with the demands of the league, both in the administrative stuff and also to kind of get the right players in and be able to keep up with the finances going between teams. So, what are your thoughts on that, Chris? Like, essentially, the Milton Keynes Lightning just pulling a massive 180 and going, we're not actually going to stay in the Elite League. We want to go down and see if we can win this other league instead.
But when they made that announcement, obviously they didn't know about this second league.
True, but should that affect their opinion? And the reason I say that is because regardless of whether there was this new league or not, they categorically said, we are going to be in the Elite League next year.
Yeah. It's always a shame to lose a team out of the top league because I want to see the sport growing.
Absolutely.
However, with the Elite League back to 10, my word, does it make it simpler.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we don't have to have a team missing out every week, which means we're not going to end up with these massive disparities in games so much.
Yeah.
The Challenge Cup, if I was the Elite League, I would go back to 2 groups of 5. You play 8 games, top 4 from each get the quarterfinals.
Right.
Keep it simple. That's what it used to be. So you'd have, it was almost that was almost a north-south divide as well, because the Scottish teams were in with Belfast, and then basically you were in two groups of 5. You played everyone home and away once, so you played 8 games. You lost the bottom team out of each group. You were left with 8 teams, and that was your quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Simple. None of this, oh, let's get rid of one team and we'll readjust the group and then we'll...
Yeah.
So it's going to make the Elite League a lot simpler.
I mean, it's like what we said. We've said it several times throughout the podcast. It makes more sense for the Elite League to either go to 12 teams just to balance it out, or go back down to 10 teams. Just like you said, for the sake of simplicity.
Yeah, so I think that's going to make it easier for casual fans to follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is also probably going to be a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I never like to see a team obviously go out of the division, but I'm interested to see kind of what happens in the coming weeks and months about the fine tuning of this new league.
Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. I like if I was a Milton Keynes Lightning fan, I would probably be quite pissed off with this. I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't be, but I could certainly understand why a Milton Keynes Lightning fan would be annoyed with this news. Because like Crossy Gamer said earlier, Milton Keynes Lightning came out a couple of months ago and said we're not going to spend any more money on our team this year and try and get more players in order to ensure that we have the financial stability to play in the Elite League next year. Now, of course, then it might have happened that it turns out that even after doing that, they didn't have the financial stability to stay in the Elite League. But they didn't say any of that until this new league was announced. You know? Obviously, I would very much imagine that this league has been in talks for quite a while, whether they were preliminary talks or just feelers out there going, if we did make this new league, would you be interested in joining? So the Milton Keynes Lightning have probably known that something like this has been coming for a while. It's not as if they just had this one meeting and went, right, okay, new league sorted, boom. Like, there's obviously been, like, underlying talks going on throughout there, because otherwise it wouldn't be sorted yet. So, I think this is a bit of a stab in the back for Milton Keynes Lightning fans, especially ones that loved the Milton Keynes Lightning in the Elite League. Now, of course, they're not going to win a trophy this year, which is a shame. It's not going to be like... okay, so in this lower league, they have more of a chance to win the league, right? I think that's a fair statement.
Yes, but then again, of course, as I said earlier, with the EIHL teams losing their best players, the Lightning will lose their best players because they'll stay in the Elite League.
And also,
it's going to be a completely new team.
Yeah, and also, they're only allowed 2 imports.
Yeah, so they have to get rid of 12 imports.
Exactly, which is mental.
It's going to be a completely new team.
It's going to be a completely new team. They might actually have them and Leeds are probably going to have the toughest out of the lot, to be honest. I mean, Milton Keynes can obviously bring up players from their Milton Keynes Thunder team, so I would assume they'd have some sort of deal in place to be able to call up players.
Yeah, but everyone else, like Sheffield and Hull, will just keep the same roster. Exactly. They might make 1 or 2 changes, but they'll keep the same roster.
Exactly. Crossy said he was reading some comments on the Milton Keynes Lightning Facebook, and people were saying that the owners look like they have zero clue on how to run a sports club. Well, I mean, they didn't pay their head coach, who had head coached in the National Hockey League, so I wouldn't be surprised if that were true. I'm not saying it is, but I wouldn't be surprised. You know, like, it's just kind of been one problem to the next for Milton Keynes, and of course, like, they're in a tough stretch. They've got the situation where they're one of the teams with the lowest budgets in the league, in the Elite League, I mean, and they've made it abundantly clear that they've struggled financially to keep up with the other teams, as you would expect from a team like this. This is why we always see teams in the Elite Leagues bounce in and out of the Elite League, between the Elite League and the NIHL previously, because they just didn't have the money. Edinburgh Capitals, they've had their problems. The Hull Stingrays, they used to be part of it, but then financial issues and everything like that. Like, there was a London team at one point, wasn't there? Am I wrong in that? I feel like there was.
Yonks ago.
Yeah, exactly. But then they obviously had their problem ages ago, which meant that they couldn't stay in the league. Like, hockey's an expensive sport. Like that's abundantly clear, and the state that the league is in at the moment, or the state that British hockey's in at the moment, not enough. There isn't that interest in order to be able to pay those fees. I just think I can understand. I can understand from the Milton Keynes Lightning ownership perspective why they've done this. I think it's the common sense thing to do because they have more of a chance, like they've said, to get local sponsorships. If they have a winning team, more people are likely to come and watch them on a regular basis. There's nothing that kills attendance more than a losing team. And then you've also got... but on the flip side, the fans, they probably wanted to stay in the Elite League. Quite a lot of them, I would imagine, because it's the top league in the country. They want to see, you never know, next year might be different. Every sports fan has that when they don't win. Next year might be different, whether you're the top team in the league or the bottom team in the league. Because like we said every single week, sports is so unpredictable and you never know what's going to happen. I mean, they could pull off like a Leicester City, you know? You never know. So
Get you talking football.
Exactly. I've been watching that Sunderland series on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good, actually.
Yeah.
Just give that a what? Have you watched it?
No, not yet.
I don't like football at all. I think it's boring as fuck. But I do love sports documentaries, and it's a really well done sports documentary. Sidetracked, but go watch Sunderland Till I Die. It's a very good documentary on Netflix.
If you want an interesting kind of on BBC Three, there's the world's youngest football chairman, something like that.
Wow.
And basically, it's the West Ham chairman, and he's like this billionaire. And basically, he bought his 18-year-old son West Ham Ladies, and now this 18-year-old who's posh and has all these things suddenly has to run this women's football club, and he's got no clue what he's doing.
That sounds like a comedy series waiting to happen. Like, that is a brilliant comedy series. So yeah, that's our thoughts on the new National League. Of course, the Leeds team, they're technically not in existence at the moment, so they've got a lot of work to do. We'll find out what happens with them as it moves forward. I think both of us will keep quite a keen eye on this National League next year, if we do carry on the podcast next year.
Yeah.
I hope we do. We'll carry it on in some fashion, I would think. But yeah, very interesting. But anyway, let's move from British hockey.
Yeah,
We've
it's
talked
20
about
past
that a
8.
lot.
Let's keep going quick.
Let's move over across the pond to the National Hockey League. Now, it's quite a lot more of the same. We've now got some teams starting to clinch playoff berths. We're at that time of the year, ladies and gents. Most teams only have about 10 games left, which when you sit there and think about it, that absolutely blows my mind. Like, it feels like yesterday when the season actually started. Like, this year, more than most, I found it, like, the season for every single hockey league has just gone so quick. It's just like a time relativity thing. So, the Tampa Bay Lightning are still in first place in the league with 114 points. And if they win tonight against... if they win tonight against Arizona, they can clinch the President's Trophy. So they have the chance to get be crowned as the top team in the National Hockey League for this year, with 9 games left to go if they win it tonight, which is mental. Like, that's how big of a lead they've got. They've also clinched a playoff spot. You'll not be surprised to know. The Calgary Flames are the other team to have clinched a playoff spot. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. 95 points for second place in the league. Boston also have 95 points on the year, so they'll be close to clinching a playoff spot for third place in the league. San Jose have 94 points for fourth place in the league. Toronto, the Islanders, and Washington all have 91 points for 5th, 6th, and 7th, respectively. 88 points for Winnipeg and Pittsburgh to take 8th and 9th. Nashville have 87 points for 10th in the league. The Carolina Hurricanes have had an absolute resurgence. 85 points on the year for 11th place in the league. Vegas also have 85 points for 12th in the league. Columbus have 84 points for 13th in the league. St. Louis have 82 points for 14th in the league. Considering at one point they were at the bottom of the league, Jared Binnington, he has revived that team. The Montreal Canadiens, 81 points for 15th place in the league. The Dallas Stars have 80 points for 16th place. 78 points for Philly and for Arizona to take 17th and 18th. 77 points for Minnesota to take 19th. Florida have 76 points for 20th place. 21st place is Colorado with 74. Chicago have 73 points for 22nd place. The Edmonton Oilers and the Buffalo Sabres both have 71 points for 23rd and 24th. The Vancouver Canucks have 70 points for 25th place. The New York Rangers with 69 points take 26th, which is good. Higher the draft pick, the better for us this year. The Anaheim Ducks also have 69 points for 27th. So if the Rangers play their cards right, they could get a top 5 pick. I'm hoping so. The New Jersey Devils, 63 points, with a 28th in the league. The Detroit Red Wings, 60 points for 29th in the league. The Los Angeles Kings, who I recently did my Champs to Chumps video on, and the NHL are bastards and copyright strike.
There's a cracking thumbnail on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that thumbnail. But I mean, the video was copyright struck, so fuck the NHL.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
58 points for 30th place. And last but not least, they are starting to get some wins. 56 points, last place, the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators are trying to win as many games as possible at the moment, so the Colorado Avalanche don't get that first overall pick. You can just tell it at the moment. So yeah, those are the standings. Not really much at the ordinary there. I mean, Carolina's had a resurgence recently. St. Louis are continuing to fight for that playoff spot. In terms of the wild card race, I'll just bring that up. So the Islanders, Washington, and Pittsburgh are at the top of the Metro. Tampa, Boston, and Toronto are at the top of the Atlantic, with Carolina and Columbus in the wild card spots. There's a bit of a gap between the Blue Jackets and Montreal, 3-point gap with 10 games left to play. So still able to get there, but who knows. And in the Western Conference, Winnipeg, Nashville, and St. Louis take the 3 spots in the Central. Calgary, San Jose, and Vegas take the 3 spots in the Pacific. Dallas and Arizona currently own the wildcard spots. The Colorado Avalanche, they have had a massive fall from grace this year. They're looking like they might miss the playoffs, which is mental. Considering the start of the year they had and how quickly they dropped, I'm gobsmacked. But anyway, let's move on to some of the news. There's only a few little news bits I wanted to talk about this week because there's so many news bits that take place. So, the NHL Draft Lottery. Slightly different to most years. The NHL Draft Lottery has been scheduled for April 9th this year. So, only in a couple of weeks do we get the NHL Draft Lottery. Interestingly enough, I believe it's about a week earlier than the draft lottery is usually held, which scouts love, from what I've read. I read an article by the Hockey News which basically said, with the draft lottery being a week earlier, teams can now prioritise which players they go and look at that little bit better because they know roughly where they're going to draft or who's going to be available in the draft at that point. So it's better for teams to get that slightly more refined draft pick, which will hopefully result in more picks making it to the NHL, especially in the first couple of rounds. So scouts love it. But anyway, so the way that they're going to do this is the 15 teams that don't qualify for the playoffs all get basically put in a lottery ball thing. Then all the balls fly about when they turn it on. They turn it off, they pick one out, and that team gets the first pick. They do that for the first 3 picks, and then the rest of the picks are decided by their place in the standings, I believe. So,
the team who finished bottom, working the way up, have more balls because they've got a better chance.
Exactly. So, So the odds for the first overall pick, the lowest team in the league, the lowest team in the standings. So at the moment, Ottawa have an 18.5% chance to get the first overall pick. The second lowest team, so Los Angeles, have a 13.5% chance. The third lowest team have an 11.5% chance. And then from there it goes 9.5, 8.5, 7.5, 6.5, 6, 5. So the 15th place team has a 1% chance to get the first overall pick, which I think makes sense. It tries to eliminate tanking as much as possible. However, usually the team that finishes at the bottom of the standings, because of the probability, it gets the first overall pick. However, it's the second and third overall picks, which I think are the most interesting in this, because then the odds are changed for the second and third overall picks. So, Philadelphia, for example, when they got Nolan Patrick, they jumped from they were 8th bottom in the standings or something, and they jumped up to the second overall pick, which I thought was crazy. But I believe the lowest team is guaranteed at least the third overall pick. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the case. If they don't get the first or the second, then I think it's like an 100% chance they get the third. I think they go based on the fact that they're the lowest in the standings. They will have that pick. So, So I imagine this draft lottery has to take place at the end of the season, right?
Well,
Because
yeah, I
otherwise
mean,
they
they
wouldn't
need
be
to
able
know
to do
who's
it.
going to get in.
So yeah, the NHL season must end in what, 2 weeks? 2.5 weeks?
Yeah, it does. Will do. Yeah,
That's
we'll finish
mental.
about this. We finishes in 3 weeks because that's when fantasy finishes.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah,
3
you know,
weeks.
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the draft lottery. Just thought I'd let you know. It is being shown as a 1-hour show on NBCSN, Sportsnet, and TVA Sports at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on April 9th. I'm going to try and tune in. Want to see if the Rangers get the first overall pick. Not likely, but I'll take a look. As long as we get a top 5 pick, I'll be happy. But anyway, let's move on. Another small bit of news. We have the Montreal Canadiens and Carey Price, of course, their star goaltender for the team, and a very, very fantastic record for Carey Price. He hasn't won a Stanley Cup with Montreal, of course, so when he's compared to other legendary Habs goaltenders, that's the first thing I would argue that comes up. He hasn't won a cup. He can't be considered one of the best because he hasn't won a cup. However, recently, I believe it was in this last week or so, Carey Price has become the most winningest goaltender in Montreal Canadiens history. He surpassed Jacques Plante's 314 win record. He now has 315 wins, at least. He may have played a game or two since then. But he has now become the winningest goaltender in Montreal Canadiens history, which, considering the history that franchise has, that is not an easy thing to do. And that's an incredible record for a player. So Price, he was selected 5th overall by the Habs in 2005. He has a career record at the time of 315, 221, and 67 in 12 seasons with the Habs. And Jacques Plante played for the Habs between 1952 and 1963. So a completely different era, a completely different time, back when the Montreal Canadiens were dominant in the National Hockey League. He also played for 4 other teams as well. And then he played in the WHL in 1974-75. So Jacques Plante, he played with many other teams. Whether Carey Price does or not, I don't know. But he has become the winningest goaltender in Montreal Canadiens history. So, Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much, he's one team player pretty much.
Yeah.
From being drafted. I mean, he's been there 14 years, so obviously being the level that he was always going to get close and keep the wins going. So, see how much he can extend it by.
Absolutely, which I think if he stays with the Habs, which I expect him to, considering he's the highest paid goaltender in NHL history at the moment, he's gonna cement his place as one of the top goaltenders, if not the best. I think if he wins a Stanley Cup, he will be considered the best goaltender in Montreal Canadiens history. He just needs to win that cup. He's got years to do what. So he's been with the team 14 years. I can't remember how old he was when he debuted. So he must be, early to mid-30s at the moment? So he's still got like half a decade on him, I would say.
Montreal aren't even in the playoffs this season, so they need a run in the last few games.
True, but they've completely surpassed expectations this year.
That is true as well.
They're only like 3 points out of a playoff spot, and there's 10 games left to play. So, you know. But anyway, last piece of news. I mean, we kind of talked about it a lot recently, but I thought I'd mention it in a little bit more detail. The Calgary Flames, the first Western Conference team this year to clinch a playoff berth with 10 games left to play, of course. They were idle when they actually clinched their playoff berth. The reason they clinched their playoff berth is because the Minnesota Wild lost their game, and that, due to the statistics of it all, meant that they couldn't catch the Calgary Flames, or the next lowest team couldn't catch the Calgary Flames. So they clinched a playoff berth. So, well done to the Calgary Flames. They did it, and they were sat at home at St. Patrick's Day doing it. I mean, it's not a bad way to clinch the playoffs, is it?
Nope.
Anything you want to add on that?
No, not really.
Fair enough. So, moving over to the KHL before we get on to Brits Abroad. Just thought I'd give you an update on the KHL playoffs. Not that you guys care about it, but I do, so here we are. It's my podcast.
He likes it.
Each series is now 3 games into the second round. So teams have taken leads here. We haven't got any tied series at the moment. CSKA Moscow are against Dynamo Moscow, and CSKA currently have the lead. The Army men have a 2-1 lead over Dynamo Moscow. Both of those teams don't have to travel very far for their games, which is good. SKA St. Petersburg have a 2-1 series lead against Lokomotiv Yaroslav, though Lokomotiv did win their most recent game, and they had the youngest roster in Gagarin Cup playoff history. I saw via the KHL. I think the average age was 24 years old. Because I believe they had one player that's been suspended 2 games for a kneeing or something. So they had to bring another player in, brought down their average age a little bit by the sounds of it. Then in the Eastern Conference, we have Avto Mobilist against Salavat Yuleyev. I believe, Salavat Yuleyev have a 2-1 series lead on Avto Mobilist. Avto Mobilist didn't lose a single game in the first round, so they've had their first deficit and their first 2 losses. And then we have Baris Astana against Avangard Omsk, and Omsk have a 2-1 series lead on Baris Astana. They have only lost 1 game in the postseason so far, as have CSKA Moscow as well. So I'm keeping an eye on the KHL playoffs, and I think it's really cool. The Eastern Conference play today, so the Western Conference play tomorrow. And we could have 2 teams that are 1 game away from the conference finals or some tie series. I do love the playoffs. Very interesting. Anyway, Brits abroad. Tell us about Kirky, Chris.
Yeah, well, there's no Tomo to report because obviously his season's finished and they came bottom. Yeah. Liam Kirk. Hey. Right, 63 games played, 47 points. That's 26 plus 21. He's gone... Well, I was a little bit quiet since the last podcast. So he's played 3 games since the last podcast. He scored on Saturday night, but it is just 1 point from the last 3 games. So he got the 1 goal. He is now 3rd on the Pete's roster for goals this season with 26.
Nice, which... For a first year in North America, that's pretty impressive.
And they have qualified for the playoffs.
Indeed, they have. They did that last week. And one thing that will be interesting is, because Liam Kirk's been called up to the Team GB roster, how much of the playoffs will he actually play?
Yeah, I think Pete Russell might be secretly hoping that Peterborough get knocked out in the first round.
I would very much imagine so. If not, though, that's an easy cut. Just go, he technically can't be here. He's got other responsibilities with his junior team. Then he only has to cut 2 more players. I mean,
that is true.
Whilst we'd like to see Kirky there, I mean, that would still mean he could play in the World Championship, surely, because that's later on, isn't it?
Yeah, unless they get, all the way.
Yeah, true. I doubt it. I doubt they will, but you never know.
Never know.
So, that brings us on to fantasy. I'm not going to show you the fantasy scores. I'll just sum it up for you.
There's no point because the playoffs are over 2 weeks, so we're not actually...
Exactly. I'll sum it up for you. Basically, every single one of Chris's players got a hat-trick this last week, by the looks of it.
I mean, I had Gaudreau, who got a hat-trick and 3 assists in the same game. I had Jenna got a hat-trick. Basically, it's me against Dogman in the semi-finals. I'm currently leading by 100 points.
Yeah, which you know, I mean... The last time I checked, Eric Carlson's injured, and that's the most interesting thing that's happening on my roster. And there's no timetable for his return, so fuck it. We'll look at it in more detail
we'll
next
run
week.
Through them next week when we've actually got, finished.
Absolutely. We've pretty much hit the end of the podcast today. We have audience questions, last call. So if there's any questions that you want to ask us relating to... if you want us to go over a topic in a little more detail for 5 minutes or so, or if there's something hockey related that we didn't talk about this week that you'd like us to quickly talk about, feel free. In terms of what's happening on the channel this week, I've got another story video coming out, another interesting tale, and I'm in the process of writing it at the moment, and I find it quite an interesting one. You guys seem to have found the last few ones relatively interesting, so that's good. I'm very happy with the response that I had from my Pee Wee to Pro video yesterday. I just kind of put that up to see, I will be very interested to see what you guys think, and you guys seem to enjoy it. It
was good fun.
Yeah, good. I mean, I'd played about a lot with the editing of it, and I was quite happy with it. So if it keeps going this way, I will definitely make more. I'm going to be going away for the summer anyway, so that'd be something that I could put out like once a week.
Well, where are you buggering off to this year?
I'm going to Canada again.
Again?
I'm going to Canada again, yeah.
Are you doing the same thing as last year?
Indeed I am.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I'm getting paid more.
Fair enough.
Great. Yeah, so I'll talk about that more nearer the time, obviously. But yeah, so I'm going to hopefully get a Whatever Happened To out this week. Everybody seems to keep asking me to do obscure player this one, obscure player that one. I have got a list of players that I am sort of... The problem is I have a list of players that I slowly kind of chip away every other week or so. And then I get like 500 more suggestions. I'm like, fuck. I can't keep up. I honestly can't.
You're just going to have done the whole league by the end of it.
I mean, but the good thing is, by the time I get to like all of the backlog, then I'll have a new wave of players that have left the league in the last like 3 years that I can make videos on after that. It's just a continuous cycle, you know? So there you go. But yeah, is there anything else that you guys want me to talk about? I enjoyed just your stream. Yeah, I had a blast on the stream. I'm not opposed to doing more of them. It's just, I don't want to do too many videos in 1 week. I'm kind of trying to go more for the quality rather than the quantity. Which, I mean, if you've seen my videos, needs it. So yeah, I'm kind of aiming to do like 2 or 3 uploads a week. I will do a stream at some point. I might not do it this week. I might do it next week, kind of like every other week for a little while. Yeah, Zach Boychuk is back following people again. You know what? I might just block him if he tries to follow me. Just protest. Nah, I probably won't. I'll be like, thanks, but I won't follow him back. Because, you know, he lost my trust. Did you also get your NHL copyright claim resolved? Copyright dispute is in process, but I'm not expecting to win it because YouTube's copyright system is absolute bollocks. Like, it's literal bollocks. Any creator on the platform will tell you that. I'm a tiny creator compared to quite the big boys, and they have problems with it. Like, millions of subscriber channels have problems with it, so I don't have a fucking chance. The thing that pissed me off about it is, like, you have videos that... Like, for example, I've put videos up before that have been copyright claimed, and they'll give a specific section where an audio clip or a certain picture is under copyright. And then you can just remove the picture, replace it with something else. Okay, copyright claim's gone. It can be monetized again, right? This one, they've just gone, no, we're claiming the whole thing. From start to finish, a 20-minute video that I spent, like three quarters of a week writing, recording the audio, re-recording the audio because it sounded like shit, editing the audio, editing the visuals. It took me quite a while to make that video, and I was quite happy. I'm not gonna lie. And then luckily I have made a little bit of money on it because it took them a little while to copyright strike it. But I'm not happy with the NHL. Fuck them. Their copyright system's shit, and I hate them. I like the league, but their YouTube system is bollocks. Anyway, anything else? Go on Reddit and they'll help you. Yeah, Reddit's a fascinating
Yeah, I mean,
place.
someone asked if there would be a podcast in the off-season. No, because he's going away.
Yeah, I'm going away. I won't be here.
So, no, simply.
Yeah, no, there won't be a podcast in the off-season, which means that when next season arrives and we have a hopefully new and improved podcast, I don't know how it's going to be new and I don't know how it's going to be improved, but
we'll figure that out.
Now. Yeah, we'll figure it out like the day before. That's how we usually do things here.
Yeah, basically.
Then, boom,
I normally get
like,
the topic list about 3 hours before.
Exactly. 3 hours? Hey, hang on a minute. I sent it to you at like midday. You have like 7 hours to deal with that. I don't want any of that feel sorry for me bollocks, alright?
Yeah, alright, 12:30. I'll give you that.
Exactly. You see? Because I'm always mindful. Don't want to give it to you too late because it's not fair. You know? Oh, and I should also mention any of my Patreon supporters. I have put up an update on there regarding...
You sent us an email.
I mean, I put a post on my Patreon. I assume it comes through to you as an email.
Oh, it did, yeah.
I've put an update regarding my patron-only live streams, just why they haven't started yet. I'm the long and short of it, I'm waiting till I have at least double-digit patrons, because otherwise for example, if my North American audience can't turn up or people are busy for whatever reason, people have lives. I'm fully aware of that. More interesting than mine, absolutely. And they've got shit to do and they can't turn up for the live stream. I will only be streaming to like 1 or 2 people, which I did Twitch for like 2 years. Isn't a fun thing to do, I can guarantee. So yeah, I'm hoping if you guys want to become a patron and get the chance to, when I do patron-only live streams, check out them and be part of an exclusive little club, then feel free. If not, don't. It's up to you. It's your money. Spend it how you want. I like to be honest like that, you know? It's like, some people like, smash that like button. Oh, it really helps me out. It does help me out, but it's your money, so do whatever the fuck you want with it. As long as it's not hurting anybody. But yeah, will you be doing a draft lottery and a draft video of some sort? Maybe? Maybe. Depends if people want to see it. I mean, the draft lottery, it's not really going to be that interesting. It's going to be me sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning talking about balls. You know, so... I mean, if I wanted to do that, I could just sit on, like, Pornhub or something, you know? But anyway...
oh, this is taking a turn.
I'm going to end this stream here, ladies and gentlemen.
Good idea.
On that note, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Keep an eye out for some videos this week and for any posts I make on my community tab. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, all that shit. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. Balls.